on the island of Sicily. A mountain is breathing. Not with fire, not with explosions. As of April 2024. Mount Etna has been exhaling perfect rings of vapor into the sky. Hundreds of them, one after another. A new perfectly circular vent on its southeast crater is puffing them out like a mythological giant. Volcanologist Boris Benke, who has spent a lifetime studying this mountain, called it the Lady of the Rings, stating that no volcano on Earth produces so many. They are beautiful. They are silent. They are a spectacle. But here is the detail that tells the real story. This whimsical, almost gentle display is coming from the same peak that just 3 years ago, in 2021, exploded more than 50 times in 6 months. It rocketed ash columns over 10 kilometers into the atmosphere, high enough to intersect commercial air traffic. Mount Etna is not one volcano. It is two, locked in a single body. One is a creative force, a builder of land, a source of almost magical fertility. The other is a monster of terrifying power and explosive fury. And the strangest part of this story is not that Etna has a dual personality, it is that the greatest danger it poses has nothing to do with eruption at all. It is silent. It is invisible. And it is moving toward the sea. To understand what is happening on Sicily, you have to understand the mountain's two faces. The world sees the explosions, the towering plumes, the red-hot fountains of lava. But for the people who live on its slopes, for the nearly 1 million souls in its shadow, Etna is more often a creator. For long periods, it produces gentle, effusive eruptions. Basaltic lava, fluid and slow, seeps from fissures on its flanks. These are not the pyrotechnic blasts of disaster films. These are flows that add territory, that cool into dark, rugged rock, and that break down over centuries into some of the most fertile soil on the planet. This is Etna, the Good Giant, the name given by locals like Stefano Branca, the current director of the INGV Etna Observatory. This is the volcano that nourishes the vineyards of the Etna DOC wine region, that feeds the pistachio groves of Bronte and the endless citrus orchards. It is a gift. But then the other face appears. Abruptly, violently, Etna becomes a machine for paroxysms. This other personality lives at the summit, in its 4 distinct craters. The Voragine, the Bocca Nuova, the northeast crater, and its most violent child, the southeast crater. This is where the short, furiously explosive eruptions take place. The lava fountaining can shoot molten rock hundreds, even thousands of feet into the air. And the year 2021 was an unprecedented demonstration of this power. Beginning on February 16th and running through August, Etna entered a state of hyperactivity. It wasn't one eruption. It was a relentless series, a chain reaction of more than 50 separate paroxysmal episodes. At its peak, there were 17 major events in just over a month. 17 times the skies above Sicily darkened. 17 times eruptive columns of gas and ash punched through the clouds, some reaching heights of 15 kilometers, nearly 50,000 feet. Catania's international airport, the lifeblood of the island's economy, was forced to close again and again, paralyzed by the abrasive, engine-destroying ash. This wasn't a slow geological process. It was a geological blitzkrieg. I am curious what you think about the psychology of living next to something that can be so calm one day and so violently unpredictable the next. The mountain quite literally grew, the accumulation of material from these blasts adding over 21 meters to its height, making the southeast crater the new undisputed summit of the volcano. It was a reminder that the mountain is not static. It is alive and it is building itself with a terrifying speed. Now, here is the part nobody on the news is truly piecing together. This rhythm, this cycle of creation and destruction, is not new. It is written into a historical record that is more complete than for any other volcano on the planet, stretching back 2,700 years. The ancient Greeks didn't see geology, they saw mythology. They believed the volcano was the forge of Hephaestus, the god of fire and metalworking. The Romans called him Vulcan, giving us the very word we use today. Inside, they imagined the one-eyed Cyclops hammering out lightning bolts for Zeus. And deep beneath it all, they pictured the monster Typhon, pinned under the island by the king of the gods, his furious thrashing causing the earth to shake and the mountain to burn. The name itself, Etna, is thought to be from the Greek aetho, meaning I burn. They knew instinctively that this was a place of primal power. The first documented eruption comes to us from the historian Diodorus Siculus, who recorded a lava flow around 425 BC. In 396 BC, Another eruption reportedly halted the advance of a Carthaginian army on their way to attack Syracuse. The lava flow acting as a natural, impassable barrier, the volcano, became a character in the story of Sicily itself. But these ancient accounts pale in comparison to the cataclysm of 1669. This event would become the benchmark for Etna's destructive potential for centuries to come. On March 11th, a fissure 13 kilometers long tore open on the volcano's southern flank, high above the town of Nicolosi. But the lava didn't come from the summit. It erupted from a low-altitude cone that would later be named Monte Rossi, the Red Mountains. It poured out not with explosive fury, but with relentless volume. An estimated 830 million cubic meters of lava began to creep down the mountain. It was a slow-moving river of fire, but it was unstoppable. It moved with a horrifying patience. First, it completely buried the village of Malpaso. Then it consumed Belpasso. The flow advanced for 4 months, a creeping tide of destruction. It swallowed no fewer than 10 villages and hamlets, wiping them from the map. The people could only watch. Panic gripped the city of Catania, Sicily's second largest city, which lay directly in the flow's path. Desperate attempts were made to divert it, perhaps the first such attempt in history, but they were futile. By April, the lava river, in some places 2 kilometers wide, reached the city's western walls. These were formidable medieval fortifications, stone sentinels that had stood for centuries. For days, the lava piled up against them, rising higher and higher until it overtopped them, cascading into the city like a fiery waterfall. It destroyed the western part of Catania before finally pouring into the harbor, pushing the coastline itself further out into the Ionian Sea. The eruption lasted until July 15th. It didn't just damage a region, it re-engineered it. The event became seared into the collective memory of Sicily, a demonstration that Etna, when it truly chose to, could erase anything man could build. And it was not a singular event. The volcano reminded everyone of this lesson in the 20th century. For this, you have to look at the story of Mascali. The town sat on the eastern slope, a quiet community in the path of potential flows. On November 2nd, 1928, a new fissure opened on the east-northeast flank. The lava that emerged was not the voluminous flood of 1669, but it was aimed directly at the town. The evacuation was orderly. The warnings had been heeded. People had time to save themselves, to move their belongings. But they could not save their homes. The flow reached the town and began its work. Within 6 days, by November 8th, Mascali was gone. The lava had completely and utterly buried it. Photographs from the time, famously used by Benito Mussolini's regime as propaganda to highlight the state's efficiency in rehousing the displaced, show a church tower standing defiantly while a river of black rock consumes everything around it. Soon, even the church was gone. Mascali remains one of the few instances in Etna's recent history where an entire town was methodically erased. It proved that 1669 was not an anomaly. It was a promise. If you value this kind of deep historical context to understand current events, a subscription to the channel helps us make more content just like this. So why is this volcano here? Why is it so relentlessly, uniquely active? The answer lies deep beneath the Mediterranean. Etna sits on the complex boundary where the African tectonic plate pushes north and dives beneath the Eurasian plate. But this is not a simple subduction zone volcano like those in the Pacific's Ring of Fire. Its volcanism is far stranger. Scientists now believe Etna is fed by something called a mantle window, a tear in the subducting Ionian sea slab. This opening allows hotter, more buoyant material to rise from the deeper mantle. This complex plumbing system, a direct line to the planet's molten interior, is what gives Etna its high rate of activity and its unique basaltic lavas. It's not just sitting on a crack in the crust, it is tapping into a much deeper source of energy. This is the part the news cameras don't see. Keeping watch over this immense power is a small army of scientists at the Istituto Nazionale di Geofisica e Vulcanologia, the INGV, working from the Osservatorio Etneo in Catania. This is the nerve center. For 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they monitor the volcano's every breath. Stefano Branca directs the observatory, while volcanologists like Boris Benke act as its public interpreters, translating the mountain's groans and rumbles into data that can save lives. Their tools are not just seismometers waiting for a tremor. They use a network of high-precision GPS sensors that can detect millimeters of ground inflation as magma rises. They deploy gas sniffers that analyze the chemical composition of fumes from the craters, looking for changes in sulfur dioxide that can signal an impending eruption. Satellites from the European Space Agency watch from orbit, using radar to map ground deformation across the entire 1,190 square kilometer edifice. They are watching a giant sleep, trying to predict the exact moment it decides to stir. This constant vigilance transforms Etna from a mythological beast into one of the most intensely studied natural laboratories on Earth. But here is the detail that reframes the entire threat. The most catastrophic danger from Mount Etna is not the fire that comes out of the top. It is the mountain itself. The real story is gravity. Scientists have now confirmed what was long suspected. Etna's entire eastern flank is unstable. The whole side of the mountain, a vast wedge of rock and ancient lava flows that faces the Ionian Sea, is slowly, unstoppably sliding downwards. The rate of movement isn't dramatic. In most places, it is just a few centimeters per year, the speed at which a fingernail grows. But it is not uniform, and it is not stopping. In some places, it has been measured at up to 5 centimeters in a single year. And this movement is not just surface creep. Dr. Heidrun Kopp of the GOMR Helmholtz Center for Ocean Research has stated plainly, the entire slope is in motion due to gravity. It is therefore quite possible that it could collapse catastrophically. Zoom out, and the stakes become terrifyingly clear. What happens if this movement accelerates? What happens if a large section of that sliding flank detaches all at once and collapses into the sea? The models are apocalyptic. Such an event would trigger a devastating tsunami. Not a regional wave, but a basin-wide cataclysm. Waves potentially reaching 40 meters in height could radiate outwards across the entire eastern Mediterranean. The coasts of Sicily and mainland Italy would be inundated within minutes. Greece, Albania, and the North African coast would have just hours of warning. It would be a disaster on a scale not seen in modern European history. The lava flows of 1669 destroyed towns. A flank collapse could redraw the map of the Mediterranean coastline. It's a low probability, high consequence event. And every millimeter of slip, measured by the scientists at INGV, is one more tick of a geological clock. It's a bit wild this isn't bigger news. Feel free to send this to a friend who appreciates these kinds of hidden stories. This brings up the obvious question. Why would nearly 1 million people choose to live on the slopes and in the immediate vicinity of such a multifaceted threat? The answer is the same reason people have done so for thousands of years. The volcano gives back. The very volcanic ash that closes airports breaks down into unbelievably rich soil. It is a paradox. The material of destruction is also the source of life. This is why the volcanic slopes are not a barren wasteland, but a lush terraced garden. The Etna DOC wine region produces some of the most sought-after wines in the world, with vintners cultivating native grapes like Nerello Mascalis on terraces carved into the mountains. It is a place of geographical extremity that produces flavors you can find nowhere else. The town of Bronte, on the western flank, is world famous for its green gold, the emerald-hued pistachios that grow in the lava soil. The trade-off is clear. You accept the risk for the reward. You live with the unpredictable giant because it provides a bounty. Life with Etna is a process of normalization. The danger is so constant, it almost fades into the background. And nothing illustrates this better than the fact that Mount Etna has ski resorts. On the south side, there is Etna Sud, near the Refugio Sapienza. On the north, Piano Provenzano. This northern resort was completely destroyed by the flank eruption of 2002. A river of lava and ash buried the ski lifts, the hotels, the entire tourist complex. And what did the locals do? They rebuilt it. You can literally ski down the slopes of one of the world's most active volcanoes, on snow that covers land forged by fire, just 2 decades earlier. This surreal contrast is everywhere. Each year, millions of ladybugs migrate to the volcano's upper slopes to hibernate in the cold, creating vast red carpets near the summit just beneath the snow. Feral cats have been observed living near the summit craters, somehow surviving the sulfurous fumes and harsh conditions. It is a world where humanity and nature have adapted to a state of permanent, low-level crisis. The greatest problem for most residents is not lava, but ash. The dark, gritty powder gets into everything. It blankets cars, clogs drains, and most critically, shuts down the Catania Fontanarossa airport, severing Sicily's main link to the outside world and costing the economy millions with every closure. It's this mundane disruption, not the spectacular explosions, that defines the modern relationship with the volcano. So, we are left with a mountain of contradictions. A benevolent provider of fertile land that can become an indiscriminate destroyer in a matter of hours. a tourist attraction with ski lifts and hiking trails that is also a ticking time bomb of flank instability. The ancient Romans saw the god Vulcan's forge. Today, we see a complex interaction of plate tectonics, mantle plumes, and gravity, monitored by a web of sensors that give us just enough warning to get out of the way. But the monitoring can only predict an eruption. It cannot predict the far greater threat of collapse. It cannot stop the slow, silent slide. 3 questions hang over the summit of Etna tonight, more urgent than ever before. After the hyperactivity of 2021 and the bizarre smoke rings of 2024, what stage is the volcano entering now? Why does its cycle of activity appear to be accelerating, with massive events happening every few years instead of every few decades? And the most important question of all, what does it mean for millions of people when the ground beneath them is confirmed to be moving, inch by inch, toward the sea? The data from the ING provides a warning, but it cannot offer certainty. The volcano may fall quiet for a decade, or it could produce another series of 50 paroxysms next year. The flank may continue its harmlessly slow creep for 1,000 years, or it may not. Most people just watch a video and leave, so if you found this insightful, a quick subscribe helps the channel immensely. For now, the mountain just is. Somewhere deep beneath the tourist centers and the ancient vineyards, magma is recharging the system. On the eastern flank, gravity continues its relentless pull, and the slide toward the Ionian Sea adds another fraction of a millimeter to its journey. Etna is not just erupting, it is moving, and in the dark, silent depths of the Mediterranean, the water is waiting.